This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Sahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 430 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Wutzko, and today we will talk about the Derbysieger against FC Schalke and Saturday's clash against 1. FC Köln, which kicks off a frenzy of 13 games in 43 days. Whew. For all that and more, joins me Matthias Zug. Hello Matthias, how are you doing? How are you enjoying the international break?
Well, I'm enjoying it in the sense of there is a break. I haven't watched a single second of international football because I think the Nations League is exactly what Steffen Baumgart says, a competition that nobody wants or needs.
Well, I actually appreciate the Nations League. I think it creates interesting games. So I care a little bit more about the international games than I otherwise would, maybe. But that's still very, very hard to measure because I pay not that much attention. But I did watch Germany against England with one eye because I think I was playing video games parallel to it. But I did see Nico Schlotterbeck stud sub tackle into Jude Bellingham's shin, which was a lot of fun and exactly what you wanted to see. But Matthias, we do have a sponsor for this episode.
Wir sind komplett schuldenfrei, wir zahlen keinen einzigen Euro an Zinsen.
And this episode is sponsored by Steve Berkowitz, who is a longtime listener and a longtime supporter of our show. So for that, first of all, thank you, Steve. Pretty sure it's like north of 5 years, maybe even longer. I'm not sure, but it's always great to have such loyal listenership. And Steve has a shout out to Borussia STL, the St. Louis supporters of BVB. And I think they actually had a camera crew with them in St. Louis for the Revierderby. I don't know for what exactly and what they filmed, but I'm sure eventually we shall see the footage. Don't know for what network, but can't wait to see it. And let's talk about the Revierderby. And from the get-go, that even though Schalke were without a chance and Dortmund were very dominant, and obviously you can argue the scoreline should be higher, yada yada, I personally just really enjoyed the entire Revierderby and all the shenanigans around it. And, I was very nervous until full time. Like, the full-time whistle was a big relief for me. My Apple Watch told me with 2 minutes left on the clock that in the last 10 minutes, my heart rate has been over 120 beats per minute without any activity, and asking me if something is wrong, even though if you rewatch the game, Schalke weren't really threatening. However, it just, to me, it is a very important game. And of course, on one hand, you're very glad that it's back. On the other hand, it was also funny that Schalke got relegated. But nevertheless, Matthias, to me, it was a very meaningful game and a very meaningful win. And you can now fill in everything in between if you want, because that's the first thing I wanted to get off my chest, is that I personally really enjoyed it and was very anxious.
Oh, I'm right there with you. I mean, I was the jubilation when Moukoko scored, the guttural scream that went through the house, accompanied with the then following scream because I had thrown my back out and I was on the couch not really moving. Was quite audible, but it's a Schalke Revierderby. It doesn't really matter where each team is sitting in the table. I mean, we've had Revierderbys where Schalke were pushing for champions and Dortmund were a middling squad, if even that, and it's always meaningful, it's always impactful. I actually enjoyed some of the chippiness that came with it, because that just fits. That, it gets the emotions up, it gets you going, and then when the match is over, the match is over. But it was. I don't want to say it was an exciting game because it wasn't. If you just pull back and you would look at it through neutral eyes, like my wife's eyes, it'd be like, this is kind of boring. And it was really boring. If you really think about it that way, if you take the derby emotions out of it, it was one team playing football and one team just trying to not concede. I mean, that's really what it was. And the statistics underline that, and the eye test underlines that. Schalke almost pulled it off. I'm not going to say they defended brilliantly, because Dortmund had their chances, but they defended for sure, and they put everything into defense. Sebastian Terodde is basically what I've always said he is. He's a very good second Bundesliga striker. He is not usable in the Erste Bundesliga, and I think that will be evident again after this season when he, walks away with, I don't know, maybe 5 goals. Maybe he's already scored that many, which I don't think so. I don't even think Schalke have scored that many. Let me double check. It doesn't really matter. But it was one team pushing, and Dortmund felt pretty comfortable the whole time. But you're just never comfortable because it's a derby. Because we all remember being up 4-0 at halftime once upon a time and somehow not winning that game. And so it just, obviously the commentators had to bring up the Bremen match because that's just going to be the narrative for the entire season now, which I'm already sick of. And Dortmund, clean sheet. It was Arbeitssieg. They really had to work for this win, but they completely deserved it. With a couple of exceptions, everybody on the Dortmund side actually played, I feel like, relatively well. And then, of course, there's the big downer that was Marco Reus.
I initially thought it was something in the knee because I didn't even see how he went down. But then when I saw the replay, okay, it's just the ankle. It probably won't be that bad. Dortmund are now saying that he will be returning in about 2 weeks. So, he will still miss about 6 games if the ETA is accurate, which it rarely is when it comes to Borussia Dortmund. But nevertheless, as Terzic said after the game, Marco Reus is in magnificent form and very hard working for this team. And to me, it's a really bitter loss, especially in the context of all the games that are ahead. And his replacements, Gio Reyna and Julian Brandt, probably will have to play it by committee, I guess. But it was such a downer. But Matthias, before you talk more about that, I just want to comment how the team did not fall apart afterwards. Because we've seen that too from Dortmund, that they, are then on shaky grounds if they have, such a, let's call it, traumatic event, especially of someone that important. But I thought that they actually really played well, and Gio Reyna filled in quite well for Marco Reus as well. I mean, Gio Reyna created chances. Gio Reyna, if it weren't for Jude Bellingham attempting the header, I think might have probably scored on Schwolo. Also Gio Reyna later, after the one that had this fantastic curler that just went wide. So I think at least in that regard, Dortmund are very lucky that Gio Reyna is just coming back from his injury, because I think he is the best replacement for Marco Reus, but Julian Brandt certainly can also play on that position. But obviously the entire lineup will remain a headache for Edin Terzic, even though some players did come back. But let's talk a little bit about the surprise injury, because we had no idea that Rafael Guerreiro was going to be out for this game, even though in my preview on the BVB update, I sort of speculated that even if he weren't injured, it probably would make sense to rest Rafael Guerreiro, just because after a game like the game against Manchester City, he probably would have been too gassed anyway. And we had, of course, Marius Wolf then, who, of course, later did hit the assist for Moukoko's goal. And in that regard, I do have a listener question from Indianapolis 09 at BVB Indy, and he or she asks, if Marius Wolf continues to be in this current form and start game after game for BVB, will he have a shot at going to the World Cup? And to me, that's an interesting one. So, Matthias, what do you think?
First of all, it's Simon Terodde, not Sebastian Terodde.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'm not Lars, so I wasn't going to correct you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a Schalke player, so who really cares?
Yeah.
Marius Wolf to the World Cup. I don't see it happening. I personally don't. I think the Bayern bias will continue under Hansi Flick. As it's kind of proven, even when Bayern are down in form, it'll still be a very Bayern side for Germany. Marius Wolf doesn't, I think, really fit the profile that Hansi Flick is looking for. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he maybe gets called up in the, the kind of test run-up where they always add a few extra players and then doesn't make the cut. If he would make the cut, he'll be the Erik Durm of this World Cup squad in the sense of, he's there. He's going to be the Großkreuz or the Durm of the squad that, from 2014. They made the trip, let's say that. They got to go to Brazil. And I think that's at most what Wolf could think of at this point. But I just don't see him between now and, I mean, we can't forget the World Cup's starting in how many weeks? I don't even know, but it's less than 2 months. So
it's about 50 days, I think.
50 days. Okay. Yeah. So less than 2 months. I don't see it happening at all. He hasn't gotten a sniff so far, so why now?
Yeah, that is probably correct. However, I think this question just shows how much he is already being appreciated by Dortmund fans for the way he's playing right now. And, if you look at who scored, he's actually Dortmund's man of the match. I think this is helped by the assists, but overall, I think he's just a very solid player and a role player, and you can slot him in there. And even as a left back, although he can cross with his left foot, I think he, is a two-way player in the sense that his defensive duties are not being neglected while he's also doing stuff going forward, cutting inside. I think in the first half he also got at the end of a shot. And I'm becoming a big Marius Wolf fan, if I'm honest, which is something I would have not foreseen previously, but I just appreciate his acceptance, maybe, is what you would call it, that he is a role player, that he is never going to be a superstar in the greater sense of it. However, he is making the best out of his situation. He is not bickering, but he is reliable and available when he's around. And, I'm very happy with that. So, kudos to Marius Wolf. And, the assist was beautiful, just a perfect cross. And, that Moukoko goal, Matthias, just also in the form of him taking the header, how he was towering in the air, given he was not distracted by any defenders, because I think Yoshida was moved up too far. But nevertheless, he's still 17 years old, and to take a header like that is obviously amazing. How are you describing the goal and what this does to the whole Modeste versus Moukoko narrative, and how do you think this is going to go ahead in the future?
At the end of the day, he scored the type of goal that Modeste was brought in to score, a header. Moukoko is not exactly a giant, but he took that really well, and I don't even think that was his first headed opportunity. There may have been one after that, I can't remember, I think from a corner or whatever. If we look at it purely statistically, it's hard to really say. I mean, Modeste played 63 minutes, had 10 touches. Moukoko played 27 minutes, had 9 touches. And 7 carries versus Modeste's 2 carries. It's because they're two completely different types of strikers. Moukoko will drop deeper. He'll come to get the ball. He'll be more involved in that, but then obviously he isn't up front, whereas Modeste is told you are that first line. And his lack of touches is also down to a lack of supply. Overall, I mean, you still have to look at the fact that Dortmund did play 22 crosses in the whole match, and Modeste only had 10 touches. And he had 2 shots, but nothing on target. Moukoko had 4 shots with 2 on target and obviously a goal. I think a debate, Modeste versus Moukoko, it's still too early for me. We'll have to wait and see, especially now because Modeste, I don't know why. Moukoko left Germany's under-21s. I don't know why. I didn't read any deeper than that, if he had an injury or a knock or something for their match against England's under-21s. But we'll just have to wait and see. It's good to have both, also because there's such a dramatic change of style between the two. And if you have someone like Modeste and say he's not scoring, like against Schalke, the defenders feel fairly confident for 50, 60, 70 minutes in defending him. And then you bring in Moukoko, who's a different style of player, who also has way more pace. The defense has to adjust. And that is something a lot of, let's say, not top quality defenders have a hard time doing. So I do like actually the changeup. And maybe you can also do it in reverse a few times. So overall, I think this is a good sign for Terzic and for Dortmund, but we can't ignore the fact that Dortmund have only scored 9 league goals so far. They still sit second in the table. That's because they've had a lot of clean sheets, which is a weird sentence to say right now. But, the 2 losses.
Dortmund managed to get 12 points out of 4 goals.
Yes. But we also can't forget, Dortmund's 2 losses in the league, they have shipped 6 goals. So in the 5 wins they've had, they've scored 9 and conceded 1, which is fantastic. But, you can't ignore the 2 losses, specifically the one, or actually both of them, because, the Leipzig was just an abject failure of a match. And against Bremen, I think if you play that game 10 times, again, that's not going to happen. It was just a catastrophic, falling apart at a weird time. But Dortmund have now shown that I feel like that's not going to happen again, because there have been matches where that could have happened and it didn't. Leipzig is a different story. They just didn't play well, and Leipzig did play well. Whereas here against Schalke, given that Schalke didn't force a single save out of Alexander Meyer, not a single save in 90 minutes of football. In fact, there were only 3 shots total from Schalke. In that regard, there was never really that danger there. The most nervous I got was, it was towards the end of the match, a set piece from kind of slightly to the left, but I'm like, well, they don't have Daniel Caligiuri, so why am I even nervous? And yeah, it fizzled out. Everything Schalke did fizzled out. It's Kramer football in the sense of, okay, you may not get relegated this season with Frank Kramer, but ask Bielefeld how it went in the second season. And that's really what Schalke was in this match. The most interesting player was Rodrigo Salazar, because he kept on getting fouled in the last 10 minutes of the match. Every foul was a foul on Salazar, whether it was Adeyemi or Can. I think what we've seen in this match, other notes, is Emre Can will not be starting unless Can is injured. I think Zaliha Can, who is actually...
the set piece you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
That was Emre Can. He came on and straight away need to hack a guy.
Yep.
Completely unnecessary, because Özcan was standing in front of him, and I was just waiting for this to somehow, with 8 deflections or whatever, go in, just because of punishment for the stupidity of this tackle. And Emre Can, I don't know about you, but I feel like he was actually a bit lucky to not get a straight red for that, because it was a pretty reckless challenge and was sort of from behind. Obviously it's a derby and things can get a little rougher. So I think the yellow card was fine, but if you are unlucky, a referee has grabbed for the other card in his pocket. And other than that, it was fine. But yeah, still, I was not happy. However, and maybe this is the moment to say this, when Adeyemi almost, hugged Salazar from behind to just really force him to the ground. That, to me, probably was the best counter-attacking opportunity Schalke had all game, and that an attacking midfielder from Dortmund would commit such a cynical foul, really in the middle of the park. It was somewhere in the circle square, in the circle, the center circle. I'm just gonna say that was, minus the goal, to me the moment of the game. Just because of the intelligence shown that you can get a yellow card here and deny whatever little chance Schalke have in this game. And I was elated with this. I was really celebrating this challenge, and shows to me that Karim Adeyemi has understood what the derby is all about, but also I think speaks overall to how well Dortmund defend. Yeah, because we can all make fun of Schalke and how terrible they are, but I also think in the context of Dortmund, having played this game in Manchester where they ran well north of 120 kilometers, and then having the focus for the first minute until the 90th or 96th or how long it was, to not make weird mistakes and be compact and be feisty and match the level of aggression that Schalke most certainly showed, I think is commendable, because in so many derbies before, I have missed this type of stuff from Borussia Dortmund. So, the fact that it was just a 1-0 win, to me is absolutely fine, because the way Dortmund performed, and I was just very happy with the, I don't know if you want to call them soft skills or basics or whatever it is, but this team looked like it understood what the derby was all about and played accordingly. And obviously you can play better football, create more chances, and score more goals on this Schalke team. No doubt, Union Berlin, I think, select them 6-1. However, Dortmund right now do not have the firepower to, do that to other teams. And especially not in this game, where I think Union Berlin had a lot of set-piece goals and counter-attacking goals, but Dortmund just didn't have the opportunity to counterattack, and they're just terrible at taking set pieces, if I'm frank. So, Matthias, to me, that moment overall was a nice reflection of how Dortmund, just handled this game overall.
No, I completely agree. I think, speaking of the Adeyemi foul, it was also smart in the sense he didn't go into the legs or anything. It was kind of a soft kind of tackle at the top, like a tug back, where you're going to get a yellow card, but you're never going to be in danger of a red card because you're in a position where you're definitely not the last man. It wasn't endangering the health and safety of another player. So you take one for the team. At that point in the match, when it happened, which is also perfectly fine. It was 83rd minute. Adeyemi then obviously would know that he can't make another silly foul, but he wouldn't really be in a position to do that too often. He's not one in the defensive block, Emre Can, where you don't really want to lean into that. So, no, I thought that was great. I also think, once again, Mats Hummels, great performance. He's having a very good season so far, which is really good to see. I mean, we were questioning, given his age and lack of speed and things like that. But at this point, I'll be honest, the starting center back pairing for me is Hummels and Schlotterbeck. And Süle has to work his way back into the side. Now, obviously, Süle is still coming back to fitness. It's going to take a while. I was not happy by the fact that he had to play for Germany. I think that's Flick making, that's like a reckless decision, because he is still coming back from injury and finding form, especially given the treatment he received at Bayern this year. So he hasn't had a ton of game time. But I guess, if you're going to get game time and not get injured, then, a Nations League game for Germany, fine, go do it, as long as you stay healthy. But right now, Hummels, I think, is very important, because even though I think Schlotterbeck is very, very good, you see his age, and he will make the boneheaded mistake. He's made one per match. Sometimes it works, and sometimes he's punished, and sometimes he's not. He does 99 things brilliantly, then he does the one thing recklessly. The problem is, as a defender, you're judged by the one reckless act in that moment. If it costs you a penalty, like he does for Germany, seemingly all the time, or a bad pass to the opposition when they're in the attack, you're in the defensive third, which I've seen him do a few too many times, where he tries to be a little bit too cute. He tries to then be a Mats Hummels in a situation when it's more called for to just hoof it, just clear your lines and reform, especially against a team like Schalke, where you're probably going to get possession back in like 20 seconds. There's no reason to be cute about it, and I think that's what Mats Hummels then does. Yeah, he'll look for the game-breaking pass for Dortmund to attack forward, which he's fully capable of doing, but he'll also just clear the lines. And I think that's where Schlotterbeck still needs to go. I think that's something that Süle does better than Schlotterbeck. Süle will then just clear the line, and occasionally you just kind of have to do that.
Yeah, I actually slightly disagree. I think that Dortmund's best defensive or centre-back pairing, if I'm brutally honest, right now is Süle and Hummels, because of the things you just said about Schlotterbeck. And obviously, Schlotterbeck is a fan favorite instantly just because of the playing style, It is sometimes reckless, and he does make mistakes, but I said way before the season started that I'm personally okay with this. Obviously, it is frustrating in the moment, but it is okay to allow these things to happen because they are going to happen, and you have to expect these things to happen because he does not have the experience yet, and he still has to mature, and he's still a young guy, and in this position, you're hardly ever going to be flawless. Now, what I do find funny is that Mats Hummels has, taken the competition, let's say, on his position and did not pout, but turned around, hired a new nutritionist, and is now in a really world-class form where it is to the extent that he is, to me, by far the best defender that Dortmund have right now. And it is just a beautiful sight to see, because I personally love to see and watch Mats Hummels when he's at the top of his game, when he has this commanding presence, when he intercepts balls like it's nothing and just takes a touch to take the ball away from the attacker, and then just, calmly scans the field and, plays a nice Außenriss pass or something like that. He's just a very elegant defender in that. And I don't know if it's just a coincidence, but when Dortmund shipped 3 goals against Bremen, Mats Hummels had to leave the field about the hour mark, and when Dortmund lost in Leipzig 3-0, Mats Hummels also was not on the field. So I don't know if there's a correlation or not, but I have a hunch there might be. Overall, it's still very positive to me that Dortmund now have these 3 center-backs. However, it's also only 3 center-backs, really, if you're honest, because should one go down, then it's already squeaky bum time for Dortmund at the back. And given the schedule ahead, you do not want to see any injury to any center-back or any player right now, but you just know it's coming at some point. And I fear for the day where Dortmund's center-back line will be Emre Can and Koulibaly or something like that. So I really hope that they also all manage to stay healthy, and it's obviously going to be a task for Edin Terzic to have the right amount of load management, because it is obviously going to be very important going forward. But I don't know if this Revierderby win can give Dortmund an additional boost, as it sometimes does. In the first championship winning season under Klopp, when they won at Schalke 3-1 and then came home, Shinji Kagawa was carried on shoulders through the Dortmund night sky. Obviously, this game, this Derbysieger was always described as one of the turning points or one of the sparks that really set off something special. Now, obviously, for Dortmund, this can be a huge advantage, because Bayern Munich in the title race, if you look at it, for example, do not have such a Revierderby that can set them off. Obviously, they will have a head-to-head game for sure, but nevertheless, Matthias, do you think that apart from it being a nice emotional win, it can transcend and have a positive boost for Dortmund, or am I dreaming a little bit too much into this?
Well, given the emotional state of these types of games and what they mean to a club, and I would put also Dortmund against Bayern in that as well, just because of the history of the last 30 years. It sets the tone for the team, especially when you have veteran players in there who've been through the derbies and who know what it means. And not even veteran players. I'm throwing even Moukoko in there, who's played against Schalke since he was 10? And owns them since he was 10, which is just awesome.
I mean, when he was 15 and scored the hat-trick
Yes.
in Gelsenkirchen, he was racially abused, so this was also personal for him.
Yeah. And having people like him, Reus in there, Hummels in there, who understand what this means, and Terzic as a coach who lives this. I mean, the fact that Terzic said there's nothing worse for a Dortmund coach than congratulating the Schalke coach after a Revierderby. That is a statement that only someone like Edin Terzic could say. Maybe Jürgen Klopp, but really with Terzic it's even deeper. And so, yeah, I think this is the emotional boost to help them forward, especially when you look at the fact that Bayern are struggling right now. They're struggling for answers. They're struggling for results. Not necessarily performances. I think people are getting carried away by comparing results and performances. If you watch those Bayern matches, they're still outperforming their opposition. They are just not getting the luck. It's almost like they don't have their talismanic striker for the last X number of years who would score 4,000 goals a season. And that actually makes a difference. And, I mean, look at Dortmund as well. Dortmund don't have Erling Haaland. That's goals that are just that's a component that's just missing. However, here's the big thing. In those matches where Dortmund is dominant, they're winning 1-0. They are not conceding the goal that Bayern right now is conceding. And that is very, very important to keep your eye on as that goes on, because we've always said it for years. When Dortmund have been dominant and then lost or drawn, those are the matches that Bayern somehow still gets a 1-0, 2-0 win. They somehow win. Well, right now, Dortmund is the team that's winning those, and Bayern is the team that's not. And that is very, very important. Now, obviously, the head-to-head matches are going to be very important, but if you look at the table right now, Union Berlin, that's going to be an important game. Gladbach is going to be important. Frankfurt, stuff like that. Obviously, Freiburg and Hoffenheim, but we've already gone through those. So it's actually really, really. I'm happy to say that for right now, it's really intriguing Bundesliga season. Which, when we talked after the first couple of match days, I didn't think it was going to be. Even at this point, I thought Bayern were going to be, 6-7 points clear at the top by now, which they're not.
No, and that is nice, but I'm under no illusion that Bayern will just continue to drop points. Obviously after Dortmund play against Cologne in the Bundesliga, they will then host Bayern on the 8th of October. So it's obviously going to be a massive game and arguably, probably, maybe season defining for Dortmund. I mean, if they manage to beat Bayern, I'm really wondering if Nagelsmann can hold on, or if we then see Thomas Tuchel on the sideline, because how many times have we seen it that Bayern looked like they were struggling, not getting the results, and then make a coaching change, and all of a sudden they're storming to a treble. We've seen it with Heinkes, we've seen it with Flick. I wonder if Thomas Tuchel to Bayern really is a thing that is probable right now or not. I'm not close enough to either Tuchel nor Bayern to really gauge the temperature there. But what are your thoughts? We just spitball around here.
100%. 100%. If Bayern struggle against Leverkusen, if they don't get a win against struggling Leverkusen, I think if they haven't already reached out, then they will then. And then the Dortmund match will be the defining match for Nagelsmann. I'll be honest, there would be nothing I would enjoy more that day if Dortmund would beat Bayern, and that means that smug fucker gets sacked. Because, oh my God, I cannot stand that guy. Now, I have my issues with Thomas Tuchel, but it's totally different. It's completely different. Because, you know, Nagelsmann's the kind of guy who in the morning looks in the mirror and goes, yeah, you're awesome. Whereas Tuchel gets up in the morning, looks in the mirror and goes, I got a lot of work to do today. And that's a different attitude. Tuchel is, I mean, I think every manager at the top level has a massive ego and a certain level of arrogance. But Nagelsmann, it's just, I just can't stand the guy. He fits perfectly.
Yeah, you can see a little
Bayern.
bit too much of it. Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of Dortmund fans who absolutely hate Thomas Tuchel, and there are also a lot of Dortmund fans that still really love Thomas Tuchel. And what I will say is that in my mind, there's no doubt that Thomas Tuchel is a much better head coach than Julian Nagelsmann. And so I'm not entirely sure how much my Schadenfreude will carry me on the day if I know
of course.
But
I mean, in the long run, emotions out of it would be better if they stick with Nagelsmann and he tanks the season. That would give me even greater joy. But no, I mean, Tuchel is a much better coach. I mean, look what he did at Chelsea. You know, I mean, let's be honest there. The fact that he got sacked at this point, it's like that shows how little grace is given in the Premier League to someone who within a year and a half of that happening had won the Champions League, and not comparing it to the first Champions League that Chelsea won. This time they actually played football. But I think Nagelsmann's seat is more than hot. And it'll be interesting this Friday because you've got two managers who are under massive pressure in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, the game is already dubbed the Endlassico.
Yes. Because with Leverkusen, everyone, including myself, thought that's a top 4 team. You know, given how they played last season. And
I knew they were going to fall apart as soon as I saw Derek Ray on ESPN tip them ahead of Dortmund in second place. I was
there
like,
you
okay,
go.
that's
Kiss
the
of
kiss
death.
of death. Yeah.
Kiss of death right there. And there are quite a few. I think also Rasenfunk, I forget who it was in their season preview, had someone tip Leverkusen ahead of Dortmund. And I was like, I mean, I think Leverkusen was finished in the top 4, but ahead of Dortmund? You do know this is Leverkusen, right? You know,
I feel like people always look at Leverkusen and forget that they have Radetzky in goal and Tapsoba in and Tah in defense. Like, I'm sorry, but if you want to play consistently well for more than half a season in the Bundesliga, you actually need to have a defensive, individual quality on top of everything else. And Leverkusen just do not have that. Plus, they are, and I'll be quite frank here, they are a small club. You know, they are run by the Bayer Leverkusen AG or by the Bayer AG, and there's never enough buzz around Leverkusen to really, have some momentum that transcends the things that are happening just on the football pitch. So I don't know. I mean, obviously Wolfsburg did win a title once, but it is hard to imagine that Bayer Leverkusen really take it up a notch anytime soon, even though they have the team and the players minus the defense to certainly attack and score a lot of goals and be a fun team to watch. But I do not even recall the last time Leverkusen won. I think it was against Mainz, but there was the one win, and then around that they have 3 losses. They beat Atletico Madrid funnily enough in the Champions League, but they are in 15th place in the Bundesliga right now and have 5 points. So they are already a whole 10 points behind Dortmund. And, same with Leipzig. They're also 7 points behind Dortmund, even though they managed to win the head-to-head. So that really goes to show that these two teams are pretty much already out of the running. And if they claw back in it, I would be very surprised, especially looking at the schedule, because it's not only the 13 games in 44 days or 42 days for Dortmund, it's the same for Leverkusen. And Leipzig, granted that Leverkusen have one less game because they are already out of the cup. But apart from that, Matthias, I really think that Gladbach are a good shout to finish in the Champions League, or so are Hoffenheim, because they do not have this many games to really go through. And I think this is a massive advantage that is not talked enough about. But to me, Gladbach a team and Hoffenheim a team that most certainly will have an excellent chance to finish, in the top spots in the table. Everything between 2 and 4, I think, is very possible there. And Dortmund have to watch out. They are only 3 points ahead of Gladbach and 2 points again ahead of Hoffenheim. And Freiburg and Union Berlin look very solid, very stable. So while Dortmund are in second place right now, looking at this schedule, I am confident that Dortmund will finish in 4th place or higher at the end of the season, but I'm not taking it for granted either, because too many things can go wrong and too many injuries are already occurring for Dortmund, so this can all fall apart very quickly as well. So I'm not really counting my chickens just yet.
No, agreed. And even Union Berlin and Freiburg, I don't think they're going to have a deep run into Europe, especially not Union Berlin. They've been pretty much a flop in European competition so far this season. But getting back to Leverkusen, just very briefly, a friend of mine from the region once described Leverkusen as the Autobahn exit on your way to the real city named Köln, which I think is a good segue into actually 1. FC Köln, who it's hard to gauge this season, in my opinion.
Well, they have lost their best striker, but they have gained the Tiginator. I don't know. I feel like for 1. FC Köln, this game feels like a game that has been marked in the calendar ever since Özcan moved to Dortmund, because maybe it's not quite as Mario Götze joining Bayern Munich, because Dortmund are obviously not a direct opponent of 1. FC Köln, but the fact that Charlie Özcan is a Kölsche Jung, that he has that he basically grew up in Cologne and played at Cologne through the youth ranks and whatnot, and finally broke through into the first 11, also thanks to Baumgart. And, absolute darling, absolute fan favorite. Obviously, Dortmund fans can see why, because just the way he's playing, I think he's already won the hearts and minds of almost every Dortmund fan. I personally am elated to have him. And there were some Cologne fans who have asked themselves, why would Dortmund even want this player? What can he even do? And I think we can see very well what he can do. He is the glue in Dortmund's midfield. He keeps it all together. He covers Bellingham's butt, if you will, and also just is, adding more defensive fortitude. Call it the Sven Bender role or the Sebastian Kehl role. He's just a very solid midfielder, and sadly, I don't know if he's going to be available for this game, but nevertheless, I think the fact that Dortmund bought Özcan for 5 million, absolute steal. And then on top of that, also ripped Modeste away. I think this is how you could describe it, when the season had already started and left Cologne, at least from the fans' perspective, high and dry, even though financially they were already high and dry before, which only made this deal possible. But nevertheless, I think this is going to be a very emotional game, maybe even derby-like. So, Matthias, I think this is going to be very tricky, because 1. FC Köln will be much more ready than 1. FC Schalke are. And they are obviously 9th right now on the table, 10 points. They from the last 6 games, I think only 1 win and 4 draws, 1 loss. So it's going to be very tricky against them. They have not played impressively this season, but they are very plucky, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, I watch actually a lot of Köln matches because I really like 1. FC Köln, personally. I still remember them back in the 80s when they were a really good club. And people were like, Leverkusen who? But the last few matches, I mean, they dominated Wolfsburg. And that may have been, one of the major downsides of Wolfsburg this season is the way they performed against Köln that match. But Köln played really well, but then they've disappointed. They played poorly against Union Berlin. Union Berlin completely outplayed them. Only a 1-0 win, but should have been much, much higher. I want to say there was also a missed penalty in that game. Then
There was.
The draw against Bochum gave Bochum their first point of the season. Köln was not very impressive, and they had a 0-0 against Stuttgart. And Stuttgart is not exactly a great team.
Yeah,
And-
most importantly, the most disappointing result is probably a 2-2 draw against the Dominici
Yes, Tedesco.
Tedesco's Leipzig.
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, so they haven't been bad. Let's put it to you this way. Measured against Steffen Baumgart's first season in Köln, it's very disappointing. Measured against the last few seasons before Steffen Baumgart got there, it's actually really good. Also because we can't forget there was Zweite Bundesliga in there as well. So it's just odd. It seems like they're returning a little bit to form. Not having Özcan, not having Modest, I think are huge losses for a club like Köln. Obviously, Modest and Özcan will not be well received in Köln on Saturday afternoon. To a degree, understandable. Ultras are not known for rational, emotionless thinking, especially in the heat of a match. But again, Özcan and Modest, I cannot begrudge them the move. Obviously, it's tainted by the fact that I'm a Dortmund fan, but they could play in the Champions League and make a lot more money. It's not, like you said, it's not Dortmund taking from a direct rival, as, one could now, oddly enough, say maybe Schlotterbeck from Freiburg kind of was that, but the gulf in difference between the two clubs is even greater at that point. I think that has been thrown in the past at Dortmund when it came to the likes of, say, Gladbach, as an example. But even then, it's not quite entirely the same thing. But it's going to be heated. I still remember the Podolski versus Shahin match with Dortmund and Köln on a night when it was Roman Weidenfeller who kept Shahin from getting sent off because he got in Podolski's face to block Nuri Sahin. That's why he will always be a legend. But it's going to be very difficult for Dortmund. Köln are going to stand on Dortmund's toes from moment one. Steffen Baumgart has one way of playing. This will be the way he plays. And Dortmund struggle when someone is that aggressive. Now, if they can break through the press in a counterattacking situation, that's where Dortmund will prevail. I'd be shocked if Köln play like Schalke and just sit deep. Not having Modest, not having Özcan, again, those are huge losses for Köln. So I'm going to be very curious to see how they react, how they play. It's not been great this season. I don't see them as a massive attacking threat. If you take out the Wolfsburg match and even that weird match against Leipzig, they've been kind of ho-hum in an attacking sense this season. And so that's the one thing where if Modest was still there, I'd be a little bit more nervous. Or if their striker was faster, even then, if they would have someone like Kruse, I would be concerned. But they don't. They have Steffen Tigges. And nothing against Steffen Tigges, and this is obviously my way of guaranteeing he's going to shoot at least one goal. I think Dortmund will be able to handle him. I think Dortmund will be able to handle Köln's attack. The key thing here for me, for Dortmund to get points out of this, is to remain patient. Maybe take another 1-0 victory, but beware of the set pieces. The set pieces don't give away stupid fouls in your defensive third when the attacker is going away from goal or going to the touchline in any way. Just stay on your feet. There's no reason to engage in a hard tackle there. Emre Can, as an example. That's
Mr. Schlotterbeck.
Yeah, or Schlotter. It's like, just stay on your feet. They're not endangering you. Those are the dumb fouls. that drive me nuts because it was going nowhere, and now you've given them a dangerous attacking opportunity. If Dortmund can eliminate that, and as well as corners, I don't foresee Köln getting a lot of corners in this match. Then that's another
I don't
thing.
know. They still play like they have Modest, and so they play very wing heavy.
That's true, but
So
I don't necessarily see it. But here's the other thing: set pieces, Dortmund has to get much better. I mean,
yes,
set piece deliveries, defending's been great this season. The delivery of corners and free kicks is so abysmally shit this year. That is my biggest criticism for Dortmund this season is, what the hell happened? Dortmund used to be a pretty good set-piece attacking side, and it's just nothing. It is so bad that if you just increase that just a little bit, then, get an extra goal here or two from that, but they need to improve so much in that regard.
Especially with Modest, and Schlotterbeck has also scored set pieces for Freiburg, and Mats Hummels has scored set pieces for Dortmund and for Bayern, obviously, and Germany in many ways. So it's not like you don't have any target players in the box. It's just the delivery, especially Julian Brandt's corners, are just so terrible. Oh man, it really is one of the major criticisms you have, because when you are not able to create much out of open play, I think the Schalke game is a perfect example where you then have 10 corners or whatnot, and every single one is shitter than the last one. It is very frustrating, I'm not going to lie, and I wish Dortmund could bring on a special team, say Prince Anning or so, just for the corner kicks, because if there was one thing in the preseason, you could see that Prince Anning's corner delivery was actually miles above everyone else's, and this kid is, I don't know how old he is, but he's not very old, and just funny to me that for whatever reason, Dortmund do struggle with the set piece delivery, and I don't know if it's just the delivery or if it's also the distribution, the spacing, whatnot, the runs in the box. No idea. Actually, funny is that Dortmund did score a set piece against Manchester City, but otherwise I do not recall a singular one. But if we look at this Cologne game and Dortmund starting 11, I'm really puzzled at this moment, because I listened to the little summary of Dirk Krampe of today's team training, and there are a lot of question marks. Is Gregor Kobel fit to play today? He wasn't on the field. Dortmund say he is expected to re-enter training this week, maybe tomorrow, but it's going to be close. Is he going to be available? I think having Gregor Kobel versus not having Gregor Kobel to Dortmund also matters a lot. Now, obviously, Schalke did not produce a singular shot on target, but Alex Meyer, as good he is with the foot or feet, he is, not as good as a shot stopper as Gregor Kobel. I think this is obvious. So as soon as Kobel is back, I think Dortmund will improve this significantly overall. But, same with Rafael Guerreiro. Now he is back in team training and whatnot. This is positive, but will he be fit enough to play? The good news there is that Marius Wolf obviously is fit, and he did not travel to any international games, so that is a positive. And of course, the major concern is really the midfield right now, because is Jude Bellingham going to be fit to play after suffering this kick by Nico Schlotterbeck of all players? I don't know. And B, I think it's almost certain that Charlie Özcan is not going to play because of his bone marrow edema, and I've never had one, but I hear it's A, very painful, and B, you can only treat it via rest. And C, if you are not careful, this can lead to a stress fracture, and then he's going to be out for the rest of the season, basically. So this is a very painful injury to have, and obviously even worse is that the only way to treat this is to not play, and I do not know if Dortmund can really play him a lot just because it flared up after the Revierderby, and the way it sounds, it's from the initial knock that he suffered in the preseason preparations, where he thought he was going to be out for a couple of days and then basically missed the whole training camp in Switzerland. So that to me is already a giant headache. Then of course Dortmund will be without Marco Reus, which also is very sad, and we're recording this before the United States play, so I just pray to God that Gio Reyna does not pick up an injury against Saudi Arabia, but I do not know in what shape he will be in. So interesting days. It's almost certain to me that Emre Can will play, and probably next to Jude Bellingham, but Matthias, it is, at least to me, no longer the time where you can plan from game to the next game. I think you have to have a longer term view given the schedule, and pick and choose where and how and when to rest players. And obviously we have to talk about Jude Bellingham, because he is such a great and important player for Dortmund and also for England. I think he won the Man of the Match award against Germany. When the hell does Dortmund rest this 19-year-old? Because he has played almost every minute so far, and at some point, given the intensity he brings, there will be something that gives, and I hope he doesn't pick up a muscular injury or something. But when do you rest him? I feel like if you look at the important games ahead, Sevilla, Bayern, Sevilla, etc., maybe on paper the Cologne match would be the best opportunity to rest him, especially after the straining international break.
In theory, yes, but if you look at the fact that Özcan out, Dahoud out, I'm seeing, Brandt has,
he had the flu, but he is back.
The flu. But I mean, still, what are you going to do? You want to have a double pivot of Brandt and Can?
That was what I honestly was thinking, that this could happen.
But then you've got no depth beyond that. I mean, you've got Gio Reyna, depending on, what the USA does. But even in an attacking sense, Aller is out, Bynoe-Gittens is out, Moukoko is out right now. Not sure when he's coming back. So you'll have Modeste, Adeyemi, and Man or Azad somehow flip-flopping in there.
I mean, is this the time where you put Wolf as left back and play Guerrero in the center?
I mean, that could be something worth considering, at least trying out in training. And maybe you try it out in this match. It's the kind of match that you could do it, because if I look at Köln, and I look at their squad, the people that I'm most concerned with are people they have in defense. Hübers, Soldo, Hector, Schwebe. They're good. They're good Bundesliga players. Beyond that, anybody else? Schiri in central midfield. I'm not overly concerned with the likes of Kainz, Duda, Tigges, Thielmann, and so on. They're not the players where I look at and go, I am scared of them going against Dortmund's backline or Dortmund's keeper at this point. I'm not. The concern is more Dortmund breaking down those solid players that they do have, which are Schiri, Hüber, Soldo in the kind of the central area with Schwebe in goal, and then Hector. That's really where my concern is in this match, and so I'm looking more at creative solutions. I do not believe, that Terzic will not play Bellingham. I think Emre Can is almost guaranteed to start, because you kind of need that position and that profile. Do you test Guerrero in there as that creative fulcrum versus the box-to-box style that Bellingham has? Maybe you throw it in there, and if it's not working out, you make a switch after halftime, 50th or 60th minute, depending on who's more tired and where the form is looking at that point. It would be something I would like to see. I just don't necessarily think it's going to happen.
Well, I'm just spitballing here, because it is a conundrum, obviously, because there are a lot of necessities that compete with each other, let's say. And so I think giving Bellingham a rest is absolutely crucial. And to me, really, this is the best moment to do it, if I'm fully honest. And the other thing, of course, is what worries me, obviously, if we look at the individual names of Cologne, I'm with you, but they have managed to press opponents really well and create a very tough time for them. I've seen the 2-2 draw against Leipzig, and the way they managed to suffocate Leipzig, in the way that Leipzig hardly created chances in this game, really goes to show what a good job Cologne can do, and on the flip side, can create chances from the space they have. So Dortmund in this game, I think the key, as you said, is patience, but obviously on the other side, you do not get a lot of time to think or breathe, because Cologne will try to hunt you down, and so pressing resistance on top of that, to me, is going to be the other key. How can Dortmund retain possession against this Cologne team and not give the ball away in dangerous areas of the field? And that, to me, is sort of the main worry. And if you put Rafael Guerreiro in a position he hasn't played in years, is that a good idea even, or will he make errors that come with the adaptation to set positions? So I'm not entirely sure how to solve this problem. Ideally, you have Dahoud and Bellingham and Ashan all available, and then that is less of an issue, but sadly this is not to be the case. And on the other hand, I also think that Dortmund will play once again a very direct style, so I don't think that Dortmund will retain the ball much anyway, just because of the players they have. So the good news is that Daniel Malen and Karim Adeyemi will be available and fit, because they spent the last 2 weeks, or those 2 weeks, not on the international break, but actually worked more on their recovery to full fitness. And I think we didn't mention it really in the Schalke segment, but Daniel Malen played a really great Revierderby. He was maybe a bit unlucky with his finishing, but nevertheless, he tired out Matriani, or whatever the fuck his name is, quite well, so that he did not have the energy or the legs to then close down Marius Wolf later in the game. And on the other hand, you also had Adeyemi, who really caused a lot of havoc just by his pace and the way he's playing. And obviously, I'm excited to see more of Adeyemi, because we have had so few glimpses. And, he also, had a couple of weak or poor performances, say the one against Hertha Berlin, but we all know that he also wasn't quite fit then. So I really do hope that we see some individual spark from Dortmund's attacking midfield, and considering that you will have a front three of probably, and I'm not 100% certain, but you will probably have Adeyemi, Malen, and Reina starting, and then on top of that, either Moukoko if he's fit, or Modeste, who has a revenge game. I think Dortmund can do some fun stuff up front. And, if Reina can play, then you probably will have Julian Brandt in the number 10. And I think that Julian Brandt so far is playing a good season and is in decent form. And, obviously always prone to lose the ball in dumb positions, but also always prone to do something world class. So, it's a difficult one, but I think that Dortmund could just squeak by in this game. I know it's not going to be pretty. I know if your wife with neutral eyes will not see a beautiful game, but I do think that Dortmund can be successful. But I don't know. It's going to be tricky, just because Cologne and their smash mouth football are something that Dortmund traditionally struggle with right now, because they do not have the positional play equipped enough to deal with high energy pressing. So you really just hope that Cologne tires out, and in the last 20 minutes you can just hit them.
I agree. It's going to be a game. It's going to be a game of attrition in that sense. That's why I said Dortmund need to be patient and not concede stupid set pieces, and then I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, no, that is really what it comes down to, because neither of us, I think, speaking for you here, expects any fireworks or blowouts from this Borussia Dortmund side. I do not think they are right now in the position to do that. Obviously, they do have the individual quality that they can miraculously outperform their expected goals. And let's be real, the game against Hertha or the game against Schalke all could have been blowouts. But there were also other games where they were luckier to score, say, 2 goals against Bremen. Didn't look on the cards. 3 goals against Freiburg also did not look like it was going to happen. So, sort of the variance in one game can obviously swing in Dortmund's favor, no doubt. But I want to see a smart Dortmund team that protects the ball and protects its own goal first. And if they manage to do that, I think overall they will be fine. And I think the mindset overall this season has changed over to what Dortmund was and used to be under Marco Rose. And, we can use this international break also to speak about these sort of tendencies and why, the football hasn't been the most spectacular. I personally am more content with what I'm seeing from this Dortmund team so far this season than I have been in the previous season. I can actually see an identity. I can actually see a development. And while it's not all perfect, I'm happy with the way this Dortmund team is playing right now.
No, I agree. There's a lot of professionalism around it, and I just as soon Dortmund play professionally, control matches, look nice, but then win 1-0, then, those 4-3, 5-3, 3-2 chaotic matches we've seen in the past where there are going to be boneheaded mistakes, but then spectacular goals. At the end of the day, there's just absolutely no way to please everybody. And I keep seeing that on, Twitter, which is just always a dumpster fire. But, where it's like, okay, what do you people want? Do you pick something, pick a lane, because you're not going to get winning every game 8-0. Okay, because we don't live in FIFA 22 land or 23 or whatever fucking iteration of that game it is now. But that's not reality. We live in reality. And I'd rather see this from Dortmund, controlled performances, solid victories, but not... We had solid, controlled victories for a time with Lucien Favre, but it was boring. I'll be honest, it was boring. It was slow-paced. These are not slow-paced, boring matches. I think when Dortmund clicks in that final third, you'll see 4-0s. You'll see 5-1s. Hertha should have been it. Schalke could have been 2-3-0. And I think it's just a process of trying to get there, because obviously you lose Erling Haaland, who's just an insane striker. And you replace him with a very good striker in Sebastian Aller, and then, of course, he gets hit with what he gets hit with. And now you're just trying to make it work. And it is working. It's working where it needs to, which is defensively, which has been a Dortmund issue for a few seasons. It's working central midfield in terms of controlling matches and controlling the pace. And now we just need to tick over at the front end. And as long as you get enough chances to get that 1 or 2 goals, then you're good. And don't let what happened against Bremen happen. And Leipzig, I honestly just don't know what happened there. But everything else, I am good with it. We look at Manchester City, a match where you would think, coming off of what happened in Leipzig, Dortmund could get embarrassed here, and they weren't. In fact, they were in a shout with possibly winning that game. I don't know if they would have deserved a victory. That's a different discussion, but they were in that match, and I think that shows where this team is in terms of professionalism, development, and solid base. And I think we'll continue to see that here against Köln. I personally believe Dortmund are going to win this match, and I think they're going to win it 2-0. Yeah, and I wouldn't be shocked if Modeste scores one or both of those goals.
Yeah, that's a good scoreline prediction. And if they can grab another clean sheet, oh man, I'd be so elated. And if Moukoko can can play on, I think he's also going to be on the score sheet, if I'm honest. So yeah, I really would love to see the dynamic of Reina and Adeyemi, because I think they complement each other quite well. The way they play and the way they sort of groove. Adeyemi is someone who makes the runs that Gio Reyna likes to play in, and obviously the Royce injury is very tragic. But on the other hand, I think we need to talk about Gio Reyna coming back and what it means for him now that he will probably get 4-5 games. I don't know how much he can play consecutively in his favorite position. And Borussia Dortmund have said, I think publicly, that they perceive that Gio Reyna is sort of the heir of Marco Reus. So this is also a glimpse into Dortmund's future, I think. And from that point, I'm really looking forward to seeing how he manages to create chances, because clearly what Gio Reyna is doing best is playing intelligent passes, reading the defense, and picking up on the runs. The first chance that he created for Moukoko after he came on was actually a Moukoko run behind Schalke's defense, and I think it was a 1v1 against the keeper or something, but already a really good chance, and just a nice little dink from midfield. And the scoring chance that Dortmund, the chance that Dortmund scored was also because of Reyna's cross to Marius Wolf. I think it is just very nice to see how he distributes the ball and how he plays into spaces that are open. And we've seen it now many times that Adeyemi, when Dortmund overload the left side, is open on the right side. And I think if Dortmund play quickly, and with Gio Reyna they most certainly can do that, that he will get into space or play into the, I don't know if you want to call it the B gap or whatever, but sort of the gap between the right central defender and the right back of the opponent, or rather, no, other way, sorry, the left back and the left central defender of the opponent, because I think Adeyemi will make these runs into the box, and Gio Reyna knows how to play this through ball. So I think we're going to see a lot of Adeyemi goals if he cleans up his finishing a little bit, assisted by Gio Reyna going forward. Just because of the partnership we have there. And it's something I'm excited about. We are sitting here, thinking about all the injuries and how Dortmund will, solve this puzzle. And fair enough. And, obviously, I keep saying it, I think the loss against Leipzig has to do a lot also with fatigue. And I think it will play a role, and I think games will be ugly. But on the other hand, there's also a lot of potential and a lot of good stuff that can happen in this Dortmund team. And we must not forget that should Dahoud return in the second half of the season and Bynoe-Gittens make his comeback, and then you, on top of that, also get Sebastian Aller. I don't know in what form, but I think Sebastian Kehl just said maybe he can make a return in January. He doesn't, at the same time, he also says he doesn't want to put a timeline on it. But I think in the long term, we have a very exciting squad already, and a team that can beat anyone. I mean, if you can beat Man City or come very close to it, I think you really can take it to anyone in Europe right now. So I'm overly, or in general, I'm excited about this Dortmund team, knowing that there will be crap here and there, but that's normal in sport. It happens to any team. So I'm not too concerned right now, and I'm looking forward to how it all unfolds. And obviously in the next weeks, especially after the Cologne game, I would talk a little bit more about Moukoko's role and how he will play, maybe over Modeste or next to Modeste or whatever the solution will be. But he's obviously a vibrant kid, and I think he needs to take the momentum of the goal against Schalke with him and build on that. But at the same time, do you really not want to play Modeste in the revenge game against Cologne? I don't know. End of thought.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you got to start Modeste, especially with Moukoko coming off of an injury from international duty. I think it's just the smart thing to do at this point, knowing you have so many matches between now and mid-November that you got to cram in there. you got to be smart with some of these decisions.
Yeah. Did you see Moukoko saying that he wants to win the treble with Dortmund?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if Super Cup counts for treble, But sure,
Well,
I mean, may as well.
If you win a treble and the Super Cup is among us, you at least win a domestic competitions, right?
Yeah, but I mean, here you go. Is that the rumor? Is he going to re-sign now? Because that's the speculation I keep seeing.
Well, I mean, he's been,
free?
The rumors during the international break were that Real Madrid and FC Bayern are also interested, and I'm sure getting a talent like him on a free transfer, which top club wouldn't be interested? But I'll be honest, I'm certain, or fairly certain, that he will resign with Dortmund. I think that eventually Dortmund will also just see that he, needs to be paid, even though he's very young, and it's very hard to do. But I think at the end of the day, this is going to happen. The only road bump, if you will, I can see in the deal not happening is that he wants to be the clear number one striker in any system he's playing in. And considering that Sebastian Aller is Dortmund's absolute record signing, I think in the long term that might not be a given for Moukoko, which is why he might be hesitant. Maybe that is the explanation. I'm not entirely sure, but this is sort of how I would
At
explain.
17. I mean, at 17, I'm sorry, that would be stupid. That means you have an underlying attitude problem.
Yeah, I mean but that might be the case. Greed has happened before in football, and making decisions like that, which probably are not 100% his own. So I'm just saying, it's also probably a family and agent and whatnot thing. But it's certainly going to be interesting to see. It's also interesting to see that I've seen transfer rumors around Jude Bellingham where the reported fee is lower than 100 million. And if I'm honest, if Dortmund would sell him next summer, maybe I'm biased here, but considering he is England's or one of their best players, maybe make it 200 million. Just saying, just gotta open the wallet. So
It ain't going to be cheap.
no, but I don't know, 150 million. I've seen that price tag float around. I feel like this almost feels too cheap. Anyway, I think 2-0 is a good prediction, so let's knock it on the head here, unless you have any other musings.
Nope, I'm good.
All right, then as always, everyone out there, thank you so much for listening. You can follow Matthias at Matthiasuk on Twitter. You can follow me at Stefan Butzko. You can follow all of us at Yellowwallpod. If you want to sponsor an episode like Steve, you can do that at patreon.com/theyellowwall. And we shall be back with a preview and a review of the Cologne game and a preview of the Sevilla game. There you go, obviously. And then, there is going to be the match against Bayern and so many more games. So I think taking a break from the Yellowwallpod for a week and then coming back wasn't the worst decision, because there's going to be so much content on the horizon and I will be a lot at work. But for now, this is it from us as always. Thank you for listening and goodbye.